Good morning and welcome to Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey. Now this is apparently the largest cemetery in the UK, and just driving around it this morning I can believe that. It is enormous. Now I believe I'm in the north section. There's also a south section and there are literally graves everywhere, but there's also a hell of a lot of room for more burials. There are quite a few famous people buried in here. I mean, there's authors. There's a figure skater that was in the Olympics. Captain Smith from the Titanic, his wife and daughter are both buried in here. So as I say, there are quite a few famous people buried in here. But along with famous people, there are also some infamous people in here. Now we are not here to visit the final resting place of a famous person. We are here to visit the final resting place of two infamous women. Now normally when I visit graves there's a lot of sympathy and a lot of respect and that for the people that are buried there. In this case however, I do believe that these two ladies are where they deserve to be, and they are Amelia Sack and Annie Walters. Now there were 4 women buried in this grave. They were all executed at Holloway Prison, and when Holloway went for an extension, they wanted to build an extension in there in 1971. They didn't have the room, so they had to exhume some of the bodies. The only body in there, in fact, that they didn't exhume was that of Ruth Ellis, who was exhumed many years later. But these two ladies, Annie Walters and Amelia Sack, they found a way of making money in post-Victorian London, which was absolutely disgusting. I mean, really disgusting. Now, there are actually 3 women still buried in this grave. One of the ladies out of the 4 that were initially buried there has been removed and reburied elsewhere. But anyway, what I'll do is I'll spin you around. We'll have a walk around this small section because it's an enormous cemetery and I'm not going to walk around the whole place. I'll show you around what I can of this cemetery while I'll tell you a little bit about Amelia Sack and Annie Walters.
Amelia Sack was baptised as Frances Amelia Thorne in Hambreston, Dorset on the 5th of May 1867. She was the daughter of Francis Thorne, a dealer in fruit, and Georgina Thorne from Longham in Dorset. She was the 4th of 10 children. She married a builder named Geoffrey Sack at the parish church in Wimbledon on the 26th of May 1896. They then went on to live at 7 Caxton Place in Wimbledon, London. Sack was active long before she met Walters. By 1902 she was working from Claymore House, a semi-detached red brick villa in East Finchley, North London. She was, after all, a qualified midwife. Sack was herself a mother. The England and Wales census of 1901 shows that a daughter named Lillian was born to her in Clapton on the 20th of January 1899. She would often lie about her age, claiming to be 29 when she was actually 32. Walters' background is not really documented at all. At some point she was known to have been married. She also had a drinking problem, which was very common with ladies living in London in this period. For example, all of Jack the Ripper's known victims were known to have been heavy drinkers. She would periodically advertise herself as a sick nurse. Amelia Sack put an advertisement in the local newspaper under the name Nurse Thorne. It read, "Accouchement before and during, skilled nursing, home comforts, baby can remain." The phrase "baby can remain" meant that an unmarried woman could go to the lying-in home, give birth and then leave without the child. This became known as baby farming. Baby farming, for those of you that do not know, was a term used in Victorian Britain to mean the taking of an illegitimate infant or child for payment with a view of adopting the child out or caring for the child for an agreed weekly fee. Illegitimacy in Victorian Britain was a huge stigma, not only for the child but also for the child's mother, who would find herself shunned by society. The stigma of being an unmarried mother could cause her to lose employment and even make it difficult for her to gain further employment. With no welfare system other than the local workhouse, unmarried mothers were faced with a difficult decision. Thus came the choice of the feared Victorian workhouse or give up her child. Baby farming soon became a profitable business for those less scrupulous members of society. A high infant mortality rate was part of daily life during the Victorian era, so the death of one or two illegitimate children was unlikely to raise many eyebrows. By 1902, Amelia Sack was running her lying-in house, and the charge for these services was between £25 and £30, which in those days was a vast amount of money. Many of these women left their babies behind, dreaming of the loving families that would adopt and care for them, giving them everything their mothers could not. Unfortunately, this was far from the truth. Once an infant had been left in the care of Amelia Sack, Annie Walters would be called upon to collect it. She would then murder the innocent infant by means of administering chlorodyne, a morphine-based drug that causes asphyxia in babies, or if the drug was unsuccessful, smothering the child. Their bodies were then dumped in the River Thames or simply tossed onto a rubbish heap. It is thought that Amelia and Annie may have disposed of up to 20 infants in this manner. However, their enterprise was soon to come to an end. One evening, Annie Walters decided to take one of the babies home with her to a rented home. She told her landlord, who was also a serving police officer, that she was looking after the little girl while her parents were away on holiday. The landlord's wife helped Annie change the baby's nappy and noted that the baby was, in fact, a boy. A few days later, Annie told her landlord and his wife that the baby had died. She seemed genuinely upset about the baby's passing, but her landlord's suspicions were aroused when a few months later Annie returned with another baby who was to die a few days later. Annie was arrested and charged with the murder of a male infant by the name of Gally. Soon more babies were discovered, and with the information volunteered by Annie, the police arrived on the doorstep of Amelia Sack. A search of Amelia's house turned up several items of baby clothing, some of which were identified by mourning mothers whose children had vanished without a trace whilst in the care of Amelia. The police now finally had enough evidence to arrest and charge Amelia with murder too. There is a small possibility that the pair may have been involved in an earlier homicide that resulted in another woman being executed. In 1899, Louise Massett was tried for the murder of her young son, Manfred, whose body was found in the ladies' lavatory at Dalston Junction railway station. Circumstantial evidence suggested that Louise was the murderer, and the killing was to be rid of a supposed encumbrance due to her wanting to marry a man named Lucas. However, in her claims of innocence, Louise said she had taken Manfred out of the care of one woman to give her to two ladies she met who had an establishment for the care of growing children. The police claimed they had made some effort in trying to locate the two women, but the extent of their investigation is unknown. In any event, Louise Massett was tried and convicted of the murder, and despite a petition for mercy, was executed on the 9th of January 1900. The trial of Amelia Sack and Annie Walters took place on the 15th to 16th of January 1903 before Mr. Justice Darling. The jury just took 40 minutes to find them both guilty of the murder of the young infant boy named Gally, and they were subsequently taken to Holloway Prison to await execution. Amelia Sack had to be carried to the scaffold while Annie Walters remained quite calm. It is said that she called out, "Goodbye, Sack," when hooded on the trapdoor. At 9 a.m. on the 3rd of February 1903, the executions were carried out by William Billington and assisted by Henry Pierpoint. It was to be the last double female hanging in Britain. Henry Pierpoint noted in his diary, "These two women are baby farmers of the worst kind, and they are both repulsive in type." The bodies of Amelia and Annie were buried in unmarked graves behind the walls of Holloway Prison. In 1971, during an extension being built at the prison, their bodies had to be exhumed to make way for the new prison wing. They were reburied in plot 117 in Brookwood Cemetery in Surrey, which is where we are today.
Well, that's all the information I could get on Amelia Sack and Annie Walters. Now I'm going to go off piste a little bit here and just come up with a theory, which I've kind of developed. It's more possible than probable, however. Now in this video I did actually mention Jack the Ripper's the Chronicle 5, Jack the Ripper's 5 murder victims, all being drinkers. Now when all that was going on, they actually said that there was a curfew in place, and they used to have a policeman on the corner of every street looking for people who weren't obeying the caution or the curfew. Now who would walk around on the streets of London late at night in the middle of a curfew with blood on them and not even be suspected of being Jack the Ripper? Now what if it wasn't actually Jack the Ripper? What if it was Jacqueline the Ripper? The only people that would have walked around really unnoticed late at night on those streets in 1888 would have been midwives. They would have a good excuse for having blood on them. They'd just birthed a baby. Just a theory. I just sort of put it out there. But anyway, as you see, when I said at the beginning of the video that I think these two women are exactly where they should be. Now, as far as the death penalty goes, in certain circumstances, I think it is justified. And in this case, I actually think it is justified. I don't think life in prison would have been a suitable punishment for either of these two ladies. It's absolutely disgusting what they did, throwing babies into the Thames or onto a rubbish heap. It's absolutely disgusting. Now, as I said, there are 4 women buried in this grave. Now there are only 3. When I show you the grave, I'll show you the 2 names of the women that I'm featuring in this video. I will come back at some point and do a video on the 3rd, and then I shall locate the 4th. Now the 4th is connected to a video I've done in the past. She was executed by John Ellis. Now anyone that watches my videos will probably remember that it was a few months ago I made a video on the executioner John Ellis when I was up in Rochdale. But anyway, their final resting place is just up here ahead of me, so I'll turn you around and we'll go and have a look at it together. One thing I've noticed, hell of a lot of trains go past here. We're literally just outside Woking here in Surrey. But yeah, the final resting place is actually, considering the size of the cemetery, I did actually find it quite easy to find. Anyone wanting to come here and find it, just come into the cemetery, look up Eastern Avenue, it'll come up on your maps, and just follow it round. I couldn't drive all the way here. I mean, this is Eastern Avenue here, this little lane. This is Eastern Avenue. Their final resting place is literally there. I couldn't drive here because I've coned it off because of flooding. Now I have put on the right shoes, I've put Wellington boots on today. But anyway, this is the final resting place of Amelia Sack. Now if I focus on her here, there you go, Amelia Sack. And if I come around to this side here, don't know if you can see that, it's getting a bit closer. Annie Walters. As you can see, they both died in the same year. Now, a lady who is no longer here, but is still named on the grave, Edith, rested here from 1971 till 2018. And it actually says here, oh, let's move this out of the way. Sleep on, beloved, her death was a legal formality. Now the Edith they're referring to is of course Edith Thompson. Now there is another lady buried in this grave. As I say, I shall come back and do a video on her another time. But this is the final resting place of Amelia Sack and Annie Walters. When they were first reburied here, they were laying in an unmarked grave for 20 years. The grave was then purchased and they laid that lovely marble slab on there. At that time there were 4 women still buried in there. But I shall come back at some point. I shall do the video on the 3rd and I shall go and find Edith Thompson if I can, and I'll do a video on her anyway. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And if you do subscribe, don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way you will be notified whenever I upload a new video. Anyway, that's it. That's me, Darren, from Brookwood Cemetery in Woking in Surrey. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.